learn pretty quickly the things you don't know. And
Yeah.
I learned there that I didn't know a lot of things. It's a big contrast to the military in some ways for technology industry versus the military, where in the military we've been doing things for hundreds of years. It's all very well documented and have taken that continuous improvement approach to it for a very long time. In technology, you're doing new things every day that no one has ever attempted before. And so you have to take the things you don't know and you have to augment those risks with the things that you do know.
Welcome back to the Military Transition Academy podcast. Today's conversation is for anyone who's ever looked at their military experience and thought, I know I can do more. I just don't know how this all translates. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with that feeling. My guest today, Jason, a Naval Academy graduate and surface warfare officer. Like a lot of veterans, Jason didn't really have a clear vision, a roadmap when he left in order to enter the civilian sector. But what he did have was a lot of uncertainty, which we all face, but curiosity, and for the first time in his adult life, full decision authority over what came next. Since then, he's built a career spanning technology, project management, program leadership, and consulting. And today, he is the co-founder and COO of Execubed. So we're going to talk honestly about the assumptions that limit veterans during transition, the moment that changed the direction of Jason's career, why certifications like the PMP matter, and what actually makes veterans stand out in fast-moving corporate and tech environments. So let's get into it. Jason, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Misty, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speaking with you all today. I think you did a great introduction. I won't belabor the points there, but I'm the co-founder and COO of Execubed. We're a digital transformation consulting firm, and we specialize in the digital experience for partners, customers, and employees. I'm sure we'll talk some more on what all that means a little bit later here, but thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Yeah, and we always love talking to people that have it figured out, maybe don't have it figured out, or figure it out along the way. And so your story is definitely going to resonate with our listeners. So take us back to 2016. Walk us through what you were feeling. I know you weren't 100% sure how your experience translated. That's 10 years ago. So take us back there.
Yeah, so a lot of nerves, nerve-wracking, freeing. Like you said, it was the first time I really had that full decision authority in my adult life. And sure, when you're on active duty, you can put in preferences on duty station, your assignments, all those sorts of things. But everybody knows how good those work out. And well, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? That is all pretty big conversations to have. And it can be limiting if you really put too many constraints on yourself. And in some ways I had I was originally thinking when I was getting out of the military that I have to leverage 100% of all of my background. I have to try and leverage my degree. I have to formalize any of my training into civilian certifications. And if I don't have a perfect match between all of these things, I'm not going to have any chance whatsoever. And that's just completely untrue. But that was a lot of my thinking at the time. But interesting sort of perspective as you're transitioning, and all of those questions, and where do you get advice from? And for me, all that led to a very narrow focus on what I thought I was going to go do.
Yeah, and I think that, that probably is how a lot of people feel, right? And so especially because when we are transitioning, sometimes the military tells us what we should look for. Sometimes the military in the TAP programs, they tell us what we best qualify for, whatever it is. But when you separate and retire from a contractual, opportunity that the military is, because it's a job, right? It's a career. Of course, there's a lot more expected out of military members when we sign the dotted line, but it's a career opportunity in that some of us get to do, some of us don't get to do. So when we leave, we actually have choices. And so take us through the choices that you had after you were like, okay, I can make decisions here.
Well, I think that there are a lot more choices than you think there are. And for me, my assumption was that I need to leverage 100% of my background. So what that looked like is I have a degree in naval architecture that I've never done a single thing with in my entire professional career. But I was going to go do that. So, okay, I'm going to take my experience as a surface warfare officer. I'm going to convert that into attaining my PMP. I'm going to do project management kind of things, closest aligns to what I had been doing on active duty. And I need to do that for a shipbuilding company because that's what I have a degree in. And so I had all of those sort of prerequisites put in place. And and I said, I don't want to leave San Diego because who wants to leave San Diego if you have a choice?
Yeah.
And so when you stack all that stuff up, I had like three choices of places that I could potentially work at. And that's not very many.
Yeah, and sometimes if you have an opportunity to take location off of sort of the checklist, then your opportunities will probably be a little bit different, right? And I always tell people it's important to understand, what are those constraints? Some of us have constraints. So location may be a constraint, right? Maybe it's because of our kids are in school or our spouses have careers or whatever it is, but location can be a constraint, but it also can be an opportunity as well. And so when we're planning, it's important for us to identify what those constraints are and then work, within those constraints and control what we can control. So shipbuilding, huh?
That was the idea. And I love what you said about constraints. One of the things that I found kind of throughout my career and in my experience is that the more you can qualitatively describe your constraints, the better off you'll be. Things like location. If you say, I want to be in Southern California, that's very prescriptive, that you're not opening yourself to other ideas. But if instead you talk about some place that's close to the ocean, that has warmer weather, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's no longer a prescriptive constraint. It's a qualitative constraint that something might surprise you in terms of, hey, I hadn't thought of this, but it meets my criteria. So maybe I should take a look.
Yeah, and I always like to tell people too, like if you have time while you're still serving, go and vacation in some of these places that maybe others are living in or that you see these opportunities or whatever it is. Even though vacationing is not going to give you the big picture, sometimes just seeing the amount of traffic that's in certain areas will be enough for you to be like, that's probably not where I want to go. Or, the hottest times or the coldest times, whatever it is. Location is a huge factor, though, in a lot of people's transition. And I will always point to it and say, if you can't find a job, you have to ask yourself, can you not find a job because in your location there's nothing that you're looking for? Or can you just not find a job? And if location becomes too much of a constraint, then that's where we sort of need to figure out what can we do, whatever it may be, what's within our control. So talk us through your first job.
Yeah. So, to find my first job, I went to one of the Lucas Group job fairs. Pretty common for a lot of veterans to take a look at those as an opportunity. And I was there because there are a couple of the shipbuilding companies were going to be there, and this is one of the ones where you have your first round of interviews same day. You get there, you sign up, you're going to interview. It's going to be amazing, and shortly after that, all these job opportunities are just going to fall from the sky. And that was the idea. And so I'm there with just, one or two interviews for the day scheduled, but it's a whole day thing from 8 to 7 kind of schedule. And I'm sitting there waiting for my interview times to come up. And one of the event organizers comes around and he says, "What are you doing just sitting here? Go interview." And I was like, "Well, my interviews aren't they're not until later for the companies that I want." I said, "Well, just go interview with any other place, just something that's interesting. Just get some interview practice." Like, okay, well, I'll go take a look at what some of these other things are, and that's all it took. I ended up interviewing with a company called Cymer Light Sources, an ASML company at the time, and now fully acquired by ASML, which is a semiconductor company. They build the machines that make semiconductors, microchips, and it was not something I had heard of before.
Yeah.
It was not something that I thought any of my experience really lined up to, but they're in need of really good quality project managers that can manage in a very high paced environment. And again, qualitatively, that sounds a lot like military service, but
Yeah.
prescriptively, that it wasn't on the list. So I interviewed with them, had great interviews, and I ended up getting a role there in the industry I knew nothing about, for technology that they actually create that technology brand new every day. They do things that no one has ever done before anywhere. So like
Wow.
there's no playbook. There are no rules. And so a lot of it really is, how can you adapt to that environment? How can you manage change? How can you manage that sort of pace and work? And again, qualitatively, military service lined up to that perfectly.
Yeah, and I do believe that a lot of people leave opportunities on the table because, again, they're told, look at this company, look at this company. This is where most of you are going. Stay in the DoD or federal world. And we forget that almost every company has some sort of corporate office, you know what I mean? And there's just so many out there. You have those small, medium, large businesses. There's just so much opportunity. Now, we are in a bit of a, you know, it's a crazy job market out there. But if we were just to look on the surface, you being in the military, it prepares you for so many different industries, right? So talk us through your time there a little bit as far as, I always tell veterans you should do three things at every single role that you take on. You should earn, you should learn, and you should connect. So I'd love to kind of hear from your experience. Like, what did you learn there about yourself, about maybe your experience? Were there gaps? And then who did you connect with? Maybe that helps you today.
Those are, I mean, all really good points. Some of the things that I learned, there were a bunch. So I'll talk about the role itself first. I started in project management for plasma controls,
Hmm.
which the very short summary of how this stuff works is you shoot a droplet of tin with a extremely high powered CO2 laser a few times to generate plasma that emits light at the appropriate spectrum to actually essentially etch lines onto a semiconductor. And so
Wow.
my team's role was controlling that plasma generation mechanism within the light source. And I think every person that I had on my team was a PhD in computer
Um,
science, physics, something that was extremely advanced, and not something that I had any real direct experience with. And so you learn pretty quickly the things you don't know. And
yeah.
I learned there that I didn't know a lot of things. It's a big contrast to the military in some ways, for technology industry versus the military, where in the military we've been doing things for hundreds of years. It's all very well documented, and have taken that continuous improvement approach to it for a very long time. In technology, you're doing new things every day that no one has ever attempted before. And so you have to take the things you don't know and you have to augment those risks with the things that you do know and the things that you are good at. So, okay, we don't know if this new technology or approach is going to work, but I do know that if I test a lot and if I go and try and break things, that eventually I'll find the boundaries of where this won't operate anymore. And so let's not focus on the things we don't know. Let's go break some stuff
Yeah.
and
Sounds like
figure
fun,
out
actually.
figure out what does work. Yeah, it's lots of fun until you have unhappy customers because things don't work. But that's a whole story for another day. So the learning was a lot of there are things that you just don't know, and how do you handle those risks with the things that you do know in terms
Yeah, and
of
I
connect.
it's important too. I think a lot of military members, we hear this rhetoric about civilians out there that they're not this, they're not that, whatever. But like civilians aren't sleeping while we're serving. Civilians are educating themselves, they're training themselves, and they have lots and lots of experience. I would say maybe the gap is in leadership. However, they can quickly fill that gap. And so, it's one thing for us to remember, like we are really educated, trained, and skilled in what we did for the last whatever, how long we spent in the military. And so when we enter the civilian sector, they are educated, trained, and skilled in what they've been doing. And so the goal is to be able to connect with them and where you truly have this sort of bridging the gap, my strength is your weakness is my strength, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that as military folks, and especially in the surface warfare community where my experience was, is I might not be an expert in that technical component, but I'm an expert in leadership, in management, and that's what I've done my entire career. So I mean, I managed the electrical division, anti-submarine warfare. I was a navigator, and I managed search and rescue. I didn't know any of those things when I went into those jobs, and I always managed people that had years or decades of experience in performing that thing. So yeah, again, you don't have to be both. You don't have to be the leader or the expert at the same time. You can have one and you can work on the other.
Yeah, and there are some companies that unfortunately want you to be both, right? They want you to be a technical expert and they want you to be a leader. That might speak, to kind of where they're at when it comes to innovation and continuous improvement, but be patient. And when you think about being a project manager, I mean, I managed a $42 million construction project. I'm not an engineer,
Mhm.
but I was able to do that because I know how to manage projects. I know how to organize. Also, stake management is sort of the slim shady of project management. So if you can, manage stakeholders, then you probably can, report that project within scope, on time, and on budget, because stakeholder management is really the bread and butter of project management. So, speaking of project management, I'm sure that you've heard about the PMP before you got out, but tell us about the PMP and how that has a place in your journey.
It's a pretty big place in my journey, I think. One of the most difficult things in any organization is speaking the right language. Uh, and we're
Absolutely.
Yeah, words have meaning, and it's important that you know the meaning behind the things that you're saying. And a big part of the PMP is that translation, and it's also a little bit about reframing and providing a framework for, hey, this is how it's done here. Um, and it is just that it's a foundational framework. Every company I've ever interacted with has a different version of how they like project management done.
Yep.
Every so there's always going to be additional learning on top of that, but having the PMP, having that ability to translate into sort of common accepted language the meaning behind the things that we're discussing gave me the confidence to interview with the companies that I was talking with and gave me the confidence and the knowledge to stand up in front of the teams that I ended up managing, and sound like I knew what I was talking about, even if there were some days that I'm sure I had no idea.
Yeah, and I believe that that's what people miss. I just saw a post today and it was basically saying not every military member is a project manager, stop telling them that they should go get their PMP, blah blah blah. And then I look on his profile and he's, wanting to get hired, and I looked and I kind of reached out and I was like, "Hey, I'd love to assist you in your job search. What do you think has been missing?" And he's like, "Well, they don't understand how I speak. They don't understand what I've done." And I'm like, maybe the PMP would help you. So, the PMP gives you this vernacular, right? So, this vocabulary, tools, techniques, and methods. It also introduces you to a globally recognized way of managing projects. But you're right, every single organization has its own way of working when it comes to projects. But most projects, you will hear scope, schedule, budget, resources, risk, right? And you'll hear stakeholders, all this stuff. And so you have to learn the language and have some common tools in your toolbox so you can go ahead and manage tasks and lead people. And I always like to tell people, like, could it hurt? Like, is it going to hurt for you to get your PMP? Probably not, right? Like, people ask me all the time, were you hired because of your PMP? I was not hired. I definitely was promoted though because of it. And so if it doesn't hurt, then it's just another way to stack the deck. Like, do you think that you would have gotten hired or maybe ended up where you're at right now if you didn't take that step and earn your PMP?
I definitely would not have. Again, the interviews are a lot about how well do you interview, and having that confidence in an interview is everything. I had not finished my PMP at the time that I got my first role, but I had gone through the training. I had seen, okay, this is how we talk about things. I had that confidence, and it made the world of a difference. And we talk a lot about earning certifications. The other thing that I really think has provided me a lot of value since then is the continuing education.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, you should always be learning all of the time, and PMI has so many good, presentations and videos and thought leadership put out by industry leaders across every industry out there, the kinds of people that if you had a chance to sit down with them at lunch would open doors that you couldn't even conceive of. And all of it's right there, for you to watch, learn, and continue to improve. So all of these things have been invaluable to my career.
Yeah, and if you do become a member of the PMI Institute, Project Management Institute, I think it's super valuable if you really kind of tap into the resources. It gives you discounts on all the PDU webinars or just the continuous improvement webinars. PMI has one of the best blogs that I read daily. And especially if you were like in project, in the project world, different way of looking at stakeholders, risk management, AI world, all this stuff. And then you have loads and loads of tools in your toolbox that they provide you for templates or whatever it may be. And I always say that the magic happens when you earn your PMP, and now you have to, keep earning it through your PDUs. And so anytime you come across an issue or something that that you're just not familiar with, go and read on it, go and do a course on it. Boom, that's your PDUs. Now if you're waiting to do your PDUs towards the very end and you just buy one bundle and you just do all your PDUs, and I mean, the goal is professional development, right? So professional development, so you can professionally develop yourself as a project manager throughout the 3-year time period, which your PMP is good for. So as you are, in this role, I'd love for you to maybe talk about what made you stand out, like what things that were developed in the military that you were able to utilize as far as skill sets or demeanor or way of working that helped you stand out.
Yeah. So for my experience, success isn't that one-to-one translation of what you did in the military to what you're going to do in the civilian world. I don't think that there is a one-to-one translation for really anything. what kind of set me apart was the ability to operate in a complex and fast-paced environment. Today I think that one of the biggest indicators of strong performers is how they behave under pressure,
Mm,
and really how do you use your judgment when under pressure. So again, qualitatively, these sound like all sorts of veteran and military kind of traits. So specifically, understanding intent, not just instructions. When there's ambiguity, you have to know what is it really we're going for, right? You get the commander's intent, and those are the boundaries to operate in. So you understand that, not just do step one, do step two, do step three. You can operate within clear boundaries. And as long as you, again, stay within those boundaries, you have that freedom to operate. That's how the military is structured. Very many civilian organizations are not structured like that. You'll make decisions without waiting to be told what to do next.
yeah.
A lot of people will wait and say, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm just going to ask my manager. And that's fine, but that's not how you differentiate yourself in any corporate environment. And, the last and probably most important is you take responsibility for results, not just effort. Either you can work really hard but not achieve anything, and you need to achieve things to stand out. So if that means extra effort on your part, then you put in the extra effort, you put in the hours, you learn, you network, you do whatever you need to do to achieve those results. And that was my experience of the things that made me stand out. And I don't think that those are overly unique to me. I think a lot of veterans would have similar experiences.
Yeah, and I will tell you, someone asked me one time, what do you think has made you pretty successful, after your transition? And I told them, I'm like, I suffer better than most. So a lot of us are trying to manage stress. I actually go a step further. I don't think it's stress management that a lot of us need to perfect our skill set on. I think it's pressure management. Like, how can you deal with the pressure when you might be behind schedule or over budget, or just when there's 50,000 different priorities and every one is number one, And I just tell people all the time, like, it doesn't matter what I do, probably in my career now, nothing is going to come close to what I did in the military as far as pressure, right? So, casualty reporting and making sure that everyone's accountable for after a bombing or whatever it may be. Like, those are things that were real life to me. Like, this is, it's pressure, but it's not going to make me lose my shit. So pressure management it's just an underutilized skill set. And I think that a lot of us military members just know how to handle pressure better than most. But there are some out there that don't either. So yeah.
Absolutely. And we there are plenty of jokes to go around about it, but like you really see the character of a person when you put them under pressure. And finding that point where pressure becomes something that a person truly has to manage, or you see it visibly that they're dealing with it, tells you a lot about the upward mobility of that individual,
Oh
right?
yeah.
If you are the kind of person who, if someone eats your yogurt out of the community fridge, you're just completely shut down for the rest of the day. That's not going to be the kind of person that I would delegate real high impact business decisions to.
Yeah. And it's crazy that you mentioned that, because this is going to sound like a really surface level example, but I have this example from my old HR manager that I used to work with. Her and I, when I started working for her, I had been in uniform for 20 years. So being able to work for her, she was to me like such a beautiful woman, makeup done perfectly, hair always good, looks so good, right? And I was really trying to kind of find my way at 42 as a woman with not my hair slicked back in a bun and not clear nails and all this stuff, right? And I would always just be in awe of her. And I would tell her often, like you just look so put together, right? And she always did. She never looked out of sync. One day we were having like the worst storm ever, rain, wind, whatever, right? And I watched from my window her get out of her car, no umbrella, nothing, and just the wind is just pelting her, right? I mean, her perfectly done hair, everything. And so like I go downstairs to make sure she's okay. She walks in, she grabs a scrunchie that was on her wrist, she puts her hair up, she dabs her face, and she's like, "All right, is that meeting's in 10 minutes?" Never mentioned it, nothing. Didn't say this sucks, whatever. And I didn't bring it up because I was like, "Oh, she's in the groove." And I was like, that is the woman that I want to follow. That's the woman that I want to be because it didn't phase her. All day, she never mentioned it. It wasn't until the very end when she was like, "So glad I spent an hour getting ready for that wind to throw me," and I was like, "Man, you handle that well." And it's true. Like it's like we say we're resilient. We write it on our resume, right, Jason? We say we're flexible. We say we're agile. We say we can deal with anything and everything. And the second that something doesn't go right, I see a lot of veterans not handle it right.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. So, shipyard to starting a business. How did this come about?
It's a bit of a long road there. So for me, my parents have been entrepreneurs for as long as I can remember. And I grew up seeing the sacrifices required to make that work and watching the process of small business owners wearing all of the hats. And actually, I think the number is 57 hats that you wear as a small business owner, if anyone's counting. Um, and I had not originally envisioned that to be the trajectory I wanted to pursue with my career.
Hmm.
Um, but ultimately, there were a few catalysts that made me really excited to start my own venture. First, and I can't underscore this enough, I am extremely blessed, and my wife is by far my biggest supporter.
That's
I would
awesome.
not be half as successful as I've been without her love and support through any of this. And she has always seen the things that I should be doing long before I've seen the things that I should be doing. And for a while, she had been telling me, "Hey, you have seen this opportunity. You have to go and pursue it." And eventually, I saw what she was saying, but it was still too big of a job for me. My background is operations and managing teams and services and the work. And the idea of business development, sales, marketing, all of that is just
Daunting.
insurmountable.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the biggest thing that held me back, um, until I met my co-founder, Shane Yost, another Navy vet. So immediately we hit it off. We understand each other. He does all of those things that I don't do well extremely well, and vice versa. So, for me as a services company, my service, my product is the people, is the
Yeah.
team, the consultants, the work that we do, and that's where I excel. I'm the creator, and he's the business developer, and you can do both. There are plenty of people that are successful in those. That wasn't something that was going to work for me. So once I had all of those pieces in place and that kind of support, it was just something that I had to go do, and have not looked back, and it has been an amazing journey so far.
So tell us a little bit about Execubed.
So we are a digital transformation consulting firm, and we specialize in the digital experience. And so if I go back in digital transformation, there's kind of three areas to that: people, process, and technology. And it's actually the reverse of those that the industry has evolved through. It
Yes.
started with just IT projects. We're going
Yep.
to get this stuff plugged in, rolled out to all of our users, and it's just going to be great. And quickly it evolved into, well, we need to also adapt our business processes to incorporate technology. See, very few things, especially today, do you do 100% of a workflow within a single application. It a little bit over here, I go to something different. I submit a request in there that gets reviewed. There's some testing in here. And so you have to adapt those processes. And then about 15 years ago, people started looking at it and say, oh, we need to also look at the people. And so this digital adoption idea was born around, are the people actually using the technology the way that they're supposed to? And for us and at Execube, what we believe is we can even take it a step further,
Mhm.
which is we really want to focus on successfully transforming companies through focusing on the experiences that people have with their technology. How do I use this? The goal shouldn't be to just make sure everyone is using the new software. I can affect that eventually over time. I'll just unplug the old thing and you don't have a choice anymore. You're gonna
Exactly.
you're gonna use the new one. And so if that's the thing that we're really measuring, are we really getting value? So instead, what I want people that are in an application where they need to be. The experience they have with that is simple. They get done what they need to get done without any help. Or if help is needed, it's embedded right there in the technology. And then they move on with the rest of their job. And the job is the thing that brings value to the organization, not the technology itself. And so for us, what we saw is no one is really focusing exclusively on that experience part of transformation. And also, no one is really looking at all of the user groups within transformation, your customers, your partners, and your employees. Some companies look at one, maybe there's a little bit of bleed over into another one, but we really want to be the consulting firm that manages that experience as a center of excellence for our clients across all of those user groups. You want your customers to have good experiences, continue to come back for more. You want your partners to be onboarded quickly to bring in revenue for your company in the way that you want it done. And you want your employees to not have to pick up all the slack in those processes
Yeah.
from poor customer or partner management, because that's what happens when you don't. So that's sort of where Execubed was born. It's the XA cubed is the experience accelerated cubed. And we think that that's where that value is in those customers, partners, and employees.
Yeah, and it's so cool that you just, identified a need and, you have support and you go and do, but I'm sure that, things are a little different, from being an employee to a business owner, work-life balance. I don't know. So what are some lessons that you've learned since you've been a business owner? And I think a lot of veterans are going this route now, especially with the job market, the way that it is. And plus we have a lot to offer. And so I'd love to hear from you, like what to do, what not to do, things that you've learned, and, maybe some areas of caution.
There are a lot. I'll try to try to narrow it down for you. Um, one of the things that has always stuck out to me, if you're going to go down this road, I encourage everyone to just constantly read. There are so many good things out there, people that have been down this road before. But one that sticks with me is the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur is becoming the person you need to become to be a successful entrepreneur. And that's one of those where if you read it, it's like, okay, yeah, that's nice. But as you live it and you
Sounds
go
good.
through, yeah, it means a lot more. And it's that extreme ownership. We talk a lot about it. There are books written on the topic.
Companies, echelon front, right?
Oh, it's so many.
Yeah.
And you might feel like you have that sort of level of ownership in a senior role at a company that you work for. But it's different when it's your company. And it's that it has to become a complete and total obsession in such a way that it's incomprehensible to your friends, to your peers, to a
Yeah.
lot of your family members. You're going to rely on support in ways that you didn't expect to. And everyone else's needs will come before your own. The business becomes very quickly its own entity. Yes, I co-founded the company, but we have a lot of really wonderful members on our team. I have a lot of really amazing leaders on the team, and the company Execubed very quickly went from Jason and Shane's idea and experience to, well, this is something entirely different that is a blend of everyone in the
Mm.
company and their leadership. So uh, but it's that extreme ownership. It's that becoming the person you need to become to lead those other leaders, to be obsessed about this company and what you're going to do. That's the hardest part of entrepreneurship, in my experience.
Yeah, and honestly, the results that you're getting or not getting is probably a direct reflection of the effort and the value that you're delivering. And sometimes that is pretty sober. You know what I mean? When you think about why didn't I meet my goal or we didn't hit this revenue target, whatever it is. And then if you look back and you think what you did and didn't do, it's sobering to understand that the ball is in your court. And sometimes effort as great as effort is, it's not always valuable work. You know, I always look at people sometimes that look like they're super busy and running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And I always ask myself, what value are you bringing to the company? What value are you delivering? And sometimes being an entrepreneur, you go down rabbit holes that are maybe more familiar and maybe more simple than the actual ones that are going to bring value to the company, pay your employees, and provide you the life that you really desired and probably as far as why you started the company in the first place, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Inevitably, something's going to go wrong. And when something does go wrong, the first question that I ask is did I already give you the tools to be successful with this or not? And if I haven't, then it's always on me, right? I have not given you the thing that you need to be successful
Yeah.
here. And only after we have that, only after we've explored that enough to really refine that to a point where we feel confident that, hey, this is the way that we can be successful repeatedly, only then can we look and see, okay, well, you didn't accomplish this, but you had the tools to be successful. We're confident if you had done that, it would have yielded those results. So there's a lot of looking in the mirror and saying this was your fault.
Yeah, and it's hard when you realize that it's your fault too, right? And so and hopefully you're being a, you know, judicial project manager, lessons learned, and I'm sure your team is taking care of that. But talk to us a little bit about your team. And so full circle here, right? You're a veteran and now you like to fill your, you know, your talent needs and vacancies with veterans. Why and you know, why do they do so well in your organization?
So I love veterans as engagement managers. An engagement manager at Execubed is sort of a half breed between a customer success manager and a project manager, where you're the single point of contact for our clients. You bridge our software partners, our sales team, and manage the delivery of our services to our clients. So it's a pretty big role. It doesn't require that deep technical experience that our solution engineers do, but you do have to learn and you have to progress through that. It's important you understand what the teams you're managing are doing, but it's a lot of, stakeholder management, like you said, is the most important. We could debate that another time. Personally, I think it's communications management is the most important. If you do that well, stakeholder management is much, much easier. So it's a lot of all of those things. And, why I love veterans in this kind of role is, again, the clear understanding of the mission,
Yeah.
a respect for standards and best practices, which to people listening to this, they're probably like, well, of course.
But yeah, like
But
duh.
that's not always the case. And that's important, right? We have standards, we have best practices for a reason. Veterans are accountable to outcomes, calm under pressure, have the ability to operate in ambiguity, and are disciplined without being rigid.
Yeah.
Again, able to operate in boundaries, stay calm under pressure, lead the team, lead our clients, and it's a great fit in our company.
Yeah, and one thing I see from veterans, my husband and I were just talking about this. My husband's a football coach, and so I took the traditional route, go and get a corporate job, and my husband is, entering like small Christian schools to coach, and now he just got hired on to a huge public school here in our area in South Carolina, and it's crazy because we're 5 years out, 6 years out of the military, and now he's like every time he switches schools, it's like another transition. And you say, learn the language, right? The PMP helps you learn the language. Well, for him, it's like learning what offense they run, right? And so going from an air raid offense to whatever, I don't even know all the different offenses that he told me, but like he's up there studying, he's writing plays and stuff like that. And he's getting to know like all the terminology in order to transition. And we were talking yesterday and he was telling me about a meeting and he's like, one thing that I have noticed that you and I do well. So he's speaking to me. He's like, we're able to connect the dots. So like if we do this, we know it's going to impact that, and a lot of people, and he said civilians, a lot of civilians are not good dot connectors. And I think
Mhm.
that that's most veterans. Like I just remember being an airman first class, so a very young airman right out of, basic training, technical school, and being taught if you update this in the system, it's going to do A, B, and C. So you can't update that if you don't want it to do those three things. And my boss, Tech Sergeant Janet Bassey, she said, because you will mess people's pay up. And if you want to be hated, just go and mess people's pay up. And so, yeah, I think veterans have this really innate ability to connect the dots because we're able, and this is kind of like risk management too, is we're able to see, the secondary risk, the residual risk, right, of our actions.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those where if I don't perform my maintenance on this thing, and then we have real world tasking to go and do that warfare area, and it doesn't work, that's a really big problem, and that
Yeah.
provides really quick feedback, and it's part of the job. So, that link is extremely important. Being able to see that, as you mentioned, is just makes for a really great fit for that project management, customer success, engagement management, all of those kinds of roles for veterans, especially in technology.
Yeah, and just so you know, stakeholder management is communications management. That's what I think. When I think of stakeholder management, I'm talking what are your requirements for communication, but it's such a skill set that not a lot of people have. And I think veterans are really good at it because from a very young rank, we have to do it. Like I'll never forget when someone's like, "Oh man, you got to go brief the plant manager, right, where I used to work." And I'm looking at him and I'm like, "Yep." Like and he's like, "Oh, that's such a big deal." And I'm like, "Is it?" Like in my head, I'm like, should I be more nervous than I am? But for me, when I was at AFCEN, I'm briefing generals in Afghanistan and whatever. Like, this is just normal operations for us. We're entrusted at the very young age of, when we join 18, whatever. Like, we're entrusted with billions of dollars, speak to, really important people. And yeah, I think that's a quality that I'll take forever with me because I'm not afraid to speak to, different stakeholders and stuff because we know that with our stakeholders, they'll make or break your project. They'll make or break anything. And so you really have to get to know them, and understand what their needs are. Jason, as you look back, as we wrap up here, it seems like obviously you are on the path to a meaningful and lucrative post-service career, whatever that means to you. And I know that you want to provide that for others as well. And that's why, you hire veterans in your company. But if you knew then what you know now, take us back to 2016. What are some tips and tools that you would, give veterans as far as how to operate or navigate the military transition?
Yeah, so my advice is I have a couple of things, and I'll quote Admiral Stavridis on the first one, which is kind of interesting because I remember one of my first watches on the bridge reading the handling characteristics of an Arleigh Burke class destroyer written by then not Admiral Stavridis, but I've continued to follow him, and one of the things that he put out somewhat recently is that leaders are readers, and it can't be stressed enough.
No,
You have to continuously learn about all the things in your professional life, and it's very apparent who the ones are that keep up with that and who the ones that don't keep up with it.
100%. And also I would say reading is it could be podcasts, it could be webinars. You're just continuously developing yourself, right? Maybe reading is not your thing, but there's other things out there. But I can quickly tell if people are professionally developing themselves just by maybe a victim mindset or the things they say or mostly the things they don't say. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I'm one of those. I don't really like reading. I have my Audible subscription. I listen to all of my books. It works out way better for me.
Yeah, I need to
Audio
buy stock in
reading,
Audible.
whatever it is, and then kind of along those lines, the other thing is you should apply to be in rooms that you don't yet belong in.
Yeah.
Uh, Knowledge is so important, but networking and building relationships will compound faster than any knowledge will. It only takes one connection to open a door or doors for you that you had no idea about, or a door that it would take you a decade to get through on your own. It only takes one. Uh, Ask. The worst thing people can do is say no. And you should never be the smartest person in the room. If you are, you're in the wrong room.
Or you're not asking the right questions, and that probably says a lot about maybe your professional development as well, too, right? And people talk to me about imposter syndrome, and I understand the sentiment. I get it. But most of the time, we're vetted to be in that room. We're vetted to be in that chair at the table. And if there's not a chair, if I was invited to the room, then I'll just bring my own chair. You can be nervous. I don't necessarily always like to use the word anxious, but you can be nervous about the position that you're in, about performing, whatever it may be. That's actually normal. That's pretty, that it kind of comes with the territory, right? It's like my husband always says, it's the price of admission. I think the Celtics basketball coach said, it's a privilege to feel pressure. It's a privilege to feel, nervous and to feel like maybe you don't belong, but just make sure that's just a feeling and it doesn't come out in your behavior and your actions. We're so much more than our veteran status. We have knowledge, skills, and abilities that most civilians will never develop in their careers. And that is innate to being in the military. And
This is your journey. So own your journey. Veteran is a part of that. PMP is a part of that. But ultimately, it's your journey. It's unique to you. Um, Love those experiences and make it something that is worth it to you.
yeah, Absolutely agree. Jason, it was so great to talk to you. I'd love for you to share where people can connect with you, Execube, how can they figure out, what opportunities you have, or just really maybe kind of tap into your knowledge, skills, and abilities.
I can always follow us on LinkedIn. XA3 is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find us on xa3.com. In terms of job opportunities, we post things to the Vets to PM job boards. We post our other opportunities to other major job boards, and on LinkedIn, you can find things there. And I mean, I'm in the Raleigh Durham area. If you're around here, connect with me. I'd love to meet you for a coffee, chat over LinkedIn or text, whatever that might be. And if I can help, I'd be more than happy to.
Well, we appreciate you so much. And to everyone that's listening, your net worth is not just your network. It's the relationships that you have with that network that will equal your net worth. So reach out to Jason, get connected, and tap into his lessons learned. Check out Execube. And remember, we're here to help you become a project manager. Our goal is to help you identify your project management skill set, help you validate it with that PMP so others understand it, help you show and tell so you too can achieve a meaningful and lucrative post-service career. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Military Transition Academy podcast by Vets to PM. We release new episodes every Tuesday, so make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you listen. You can catch up on all the previous episodes wherever you download podcasts or watch them on the Vets to PM YouTube channel. To learn more about our programs and upcoming Master Project Leadership Workshop cohorts, visit vets2pm.com. Whether you're a service member, veteran, spouse, or a company looking to hire top military talent, we're here to help you become a project manager or hire one. See you next Tuesday.